one thing about the 4 people you just heard from, they're all really decent people. And I unfortunately can't say that for all of the 188 colleagues in Annapolis. Please don't share that with the other 87. Well, minus 3, but all 4 of them, the 3 delegates and Rishern, of course, and he and I go back a long way as neighbors and just friends. They're just great people, and they're great people to work with and great people to work for. You know, even in marriages, you don't always agree, and things don't always go right. Can I get a witness? Don't raise your hand. So it's to be expected with legislators and colleagues, and in fact we do agree on most of the key issues. But sometimes we agree to disagree. But the one thing, besides being decent, that everyone has in common is they're pulling together to make this community, and when I say community, this broader community, this neighborhood, this part of Prince George's County, a better place, and also the whole state. And obviously, Rishern has moved up to a greater responsibility for a whole county, 800,000 people or thereabouts, with great benefits and dynamism and energy and some difficulties, and we know that, and we've talked about this. Our school system, some places working great and some places we still have problems. But he's being faced with that, he's challenged by it, but I'm sure as hell glad he's there, and I'm glad he's our county executive. Thank you, Rishern. And also thanks to Justin and Tawana. You know, it's tough to follow these kind of things because you can only go downhill from there. You know, that you're here is a lot of important feelings to me, that you take the time out an evening to be here to support me, to thank me, and as I've said many times before, that's why I keep doing this. And if Ann hadn't mentioned how many years we've served together, she could have avoided dating how many years I've been in the legislature. I'd love to say my hair didn't turn gray, but I've lost too much of it since I've been in there. But you being here, it's very, very important. I want to thank you for coming out. Obviously your financial contribution, but many of you volunteer in many ways, shapes, and forms for me, for the state, for the county, and we all want to thank you for that. You know, having this event wouldn't have happened without volunteers, and there are a number who work the table and set up and work the bar and everywhere else. And I want to thank my volunteers, my treasurer, Anna Frankel. I saw Anna just a minute right here in front of me. My gardening guru, Gloria Thompson, the flowers in the dining area and here. She is the one for interior design and landscaping, and many of you over time have met my great staff, Ian, who's got his camera phone out, and Lisa, who's back there near the tree. And I've referred to my family. You've met Joan before, Joan Rothgett, my lovely wife. We just celebrated 27 years. And my youngest daughter, Laura Pinsky, sitting next to her. You can't tell they fell from the same tree, can you? Thank you. Yes, beautiful is absolutely right. As I think Ann or Tawana said, it was a tumultuous year in Annapolis and the country at large. I mean, we're still not out of a recession yet. We wish we were. There are a few indicators that show things are a little bit better, but, and I talked to some realtors who are here, it's still a problem. So we're not out of it yet, but we're trying to weekend to bring us out of it, piece by piece, neighborhood by neighborhood. But despite the recession, we've had some successes, both in the small sphere, the local sphere, as well as statewide. And I just want to briefly, and I've been told briefly, mention a couple of them. A lot of you are from the nearby area, and you've noticed, you know, Route 1 and the energy and revitalization. And I can tell you 3 or 4 years ago, I told someone, I said, look, I'm looking forward to the day or evening when there are people eating, dining outside on Route 1, where there's alfresco dining, where we start to hear music coming from restaurants and clubs, where there's a new energy. Maybe not a U Street, maybe not a F Street or whatever, or a Foggy Bottom or Mount Pleasant, Adams Morgan, but some vitality. And there were a few ups and downs, and at one point the retail area was stopped, and we were able to put a package together with county officials to get the retail section built. And for those of you who've been down there at Bus Boys or any of the other restaurants, and a new Indian restaurant just opened last week, we have that energy. There are people actually eating outside, enjoying Route 1. That's a little odd. That could be an oxymoron. But hey, they do it in Paris, they do it in New York, they do it everywhere else. And part of that energy, and I'm pleased to say, is Yes Organic Market. The owner of that, Gary Chod, is found with us today. And you will be able to enter through the front door starting tomorrow morning. But there are other little things. And you know, sometimes I've been criticized, we've been criticized for only taking up big issues, big picture issues, world issues. We were able to get lighting in New Carrollton. You know, they want to keep their youth involved, not getting into trouble, to be honest with you. They have Beckett Field, so they wanted to get money to have lights and a scoreboard so they can use it not just till 5 or 6 o'clock when the sun goes down, but to use it for many hours. So we're getting that lighting for them, and that's because of the team. In Riverdale Park, and thank you, they have a town hall, but they wanted to change it into also a community center. So groups, organizations can use it. And the mayor's here, David, Vernon, they've come to us multiple times, and we said we're going to try to help get that into that community center and expand it. And that's moving along, and we're very pleased about that as well. Jim from Community Forklift, for those of you who do personal reconstruction renovation over in Edmonston, that's where recycled products from old homes being torn down can be brought back, and they're resold from whatever, from sinks to toilets to walls to 2x4s, and we're working to make sure that's not only a permanent home, but that Community Forklift owns it and grows and multiplies, so we can recycle our materials. We can have a dynamic kind of community-based kind of economic system. So Jim, thank you for what you're doing. And this is just a little bit of a touch of some of the things that are happening. So we are keeping our fingers to make sure the community grows and thrives and attracts other people. On the state level, it was a tough time. There were budgetary situations, but we made some major progress. On the environment, we passed a smart growth bill. You know, if you travel on the Eastern Shore, or Northern Eastern Shore, or Cecil County, or Queen Anne County, you see they're starting to drop mini developments in the middle of cornfields. They don't belong there. The cornfields should stay as cornfields. We should have farmers continuing to farm. Part of our state should remain green, and part of our state should remain urban, where we have the infrastructure. One way to make that happen is to try to reduce that growth, because there they have to build on septic systems instead of water and sewer. So there was a septic bill that we worked with the governor on. I was the floor leader for that bill. It wasn't quite as strong, it usually never is, as we would like, but we passed a septic bill that's going to helpfully move us in the smart growth direction. Water treatment plants from water treatment. All the water that comes off our houses goes into the bay, and it's been deleterious to the bay over many, many years. We need wastewater treatment plants, and we passed a law to have enough money to have additional upgrades and building of wastewater treatment plants, and also work on stormwater development. I know our own county, they have some requirements because of federal law to upgrade stormwater. And in my county, there's a little talk going on between the county executive and the county council member. We were able to pass a law for that, and as chair of the Environment Subcommittee, I was the floor leader for those bills, and we were successful. I mentioned, thank you. I mentioned balancing the budget. Nobody likes taxes. Sometimes we need more money because it comes to cuts for people in the safety net, or police or fire or schools or the environment, and sometimes you have to raise taxes. Now, some people making $20 or $30 or $40 or $50,000, they can't afford it. They got to pay rent, they got to put food on the table, and they have much less disposable income. When you get the people who are making $600, $800, $1 million, $10 million, how many cars can you buy? So the governor put in, and we put in a progressive income tax to make a change. And I can tell you there's an article in the Wall Street Journal today attacking our governor and the state of Maryland for its progressive income tax. And what it does, yes, it's the right thing, that if they're criticizing us, it must have been right. It's absolutely true that a family that makes under $50,000 will have to pay this tax, but it also goes up for people making $500,000, $800,000, and $1 million. We would like to raise even higher for the multimillionaires, but we had some limits placed on us. But it was the right thing to do. Working people don't have to pay it. It's going to fall on 14% of the families that submit tax returns. The upper 14% of the whole state. That means 86% don't make that much money, don't have to pay. Does it solve the problem? No, but it was the right direction. The governor was right on this, the legislature was right on this, and we're probably going to catch a little more hell on it, but I'm proud that I voted for that. It was the right thing to do. Two more things, and I promise. We can get back to the food and the wine. We have an election in November. Obviously, we're going to be voting for president to retain President Barack Obama and get him reelected. But we have some other tasks when we go to the ballot box. There are two other issues that will probably be on the ballot. One is about marriage equality, to make sure everybody, anybody, has a right to marry their loved one and make a commitment and have all the rights and responsibilities that go along with it. Marriage equality will be on the ballot. As you heard a couple weeks ago, the President of the United States came out in favor of it. He said he has evolved. And I believe it has probably shifted more public opinion in the last 10 or 15 years on this issue than almost any other issue I've observed in my 40 or 50 years. 60. I wasn't very observant the first 10 or 12. You know, there were referendums in a number of states about 6 or 8 years ago, and they all lost. And there was still a strong feeling of homophobia. People didn't realize or want to admit that their uncle, their cousin, their brother, the worker next door was gay. And they voted against gay rights and any kind of gay rights. And then 6 or 8 years ago, when that went down, people who had been against any gay rights said, well, I can't vote for gay marriage, but I might be able to vote for civil unions. Well, these are people who never would have believed in that unless that debate, that discussion had taken place. And I think a lot of people, including myself, have shifted as it's been a public debate. And I think hopefully in November, we can become the first state in the country that has passed by public popular referendum those rights to be bestowed on all citizens of the state. So please vote yes. And finally, one other issue, it's called the DREAM Act. Because of the Supreme Court decision, anybody up to the age of 18, whether they are a citizen or not, has a right to attend public school. Supreme Court decided that issue. We have young people from Africa, from Latin America, from other countries who are here, brought here as children by their parents, who have worked and gone to school for 12 years. Kids who are taking AP classes, who are getting 4.3 average, above A plus if you will, who then say, I'd love to go to college, who clearly could get accepted to College Park, University of Maryland. Unfortunately, they don't have the $27,000 it would cost to go there. Even though the young person sitting right next to them, going through the same class, maybe getting even a lower grade, if they get accepted, would pay $7,000. So we're telling these people to work hard and to dream, but then after 12th grade, go work in McDonald's. We passed a piece of legislation. Again, not perfect, not exactly how we all wanted it, but it was 188 minds coming together that said, if you graduate, if you live here and go to the schools for 3 years, if your parents pay taxes for 3 years, if you go first to a community college and they continue to pay taxes, and you're successful and you get into a college, Bowie State, Morgan State, Towson, College Park, wherever, a public university, that if you have followed all these other steps and all these other hoops and jumped through them, you should be able to get in-state tuition. It's not a free pass. It's not taking anybody's seat or chair. It's to allow these people fairness and equity. That also is going to be on the ballot, and I hope you read more about it, explain it, tell your neighbors, and also vote yes on that. And let me conclude with this. There was an article, an op-ed piece in the New York Times a couple of weeks ago by William Deresiewicz. And it was about Wall Street, it was about bad behaviors, and it was about rewards. And he makes a very telling point, and I want to read this if I could. He says, he talks about Enron and BP and Goldman Sachs and Merck and Philip Morris. He says, accounting fraud, tax evasion, toxic dumping, product safety violations, bid rigging, overbilling, perjury, the Walmart bribery scandal in Mexico you might have read about, the News Corp hacking scandal in London. Just open up the business section on an average day. Shafting your workers, hurting your customers, destroying the land, leaving the public to pick up the tab. These aren't anomalies. Now, that being said, there are people who are righteous and run ethical businesses, so it's not anti-business. But he ends this way, because you hear about all these hedge fund and arbitrage and these people who are making millions and billions when other people are going into foreclosure. He wrote, most important, neither entrepreneurs nor the rich have a monopoly on brains, sweat, or risk. There are scientists and artists and scholars who are just as smart as any entrepreneur, only they're interested in different rewards. A single mother holding down a job and putting herself through community college works just as hard as a hedge fund manager. A person who takes out a mortgage or a student loan or who conceives a child on the strength of a job she knows she could lose at any moment assumes just as much risk as someone who starts a business. Making sure those people, that woman working her way through community college, those scientists, those scholars, there's some people here. Ross is a professor at the University of Maryland. In my mind, and I think in your mind, they're just as important as those people on Wall Street. And we want to make sure they have a voice, and that's why I'm in Annapolis, and that's why I want to stay in Annapolis, and that's why I'm very, very pleased to have you supporting me. Thank you very much.